Your eyes up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horse is kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.
Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight.
In the saddle till the job's done right.
Welcome to Burnin' Daylight, the only podcast for the working cowboy. Well, howdy there, daylight burners. Happy Wednesday. Hope the week is treating you well. I'm back in Nevada. Had a really, really good trip. There ain't nothing to see in Kansas except for my family, and my family's pretty fucking awesome. So, yeah, we like. I don't mind Kansas. I really, really don't. And I talk a lot of shit on it. I don't know necessarily that I'd ever want to move back. Actually, I think for the first time ever that I can recall, I referred to Nevada as back home. So I guess that means, that's where I'm at. I don't know. We'll see. Sometimes words mean a lot. Sometimes they don't. But we'll talk about words meaning a lot here a little bit later. But had a really fun week away. I apologize for not putting anything out, and you get busy. How that all happens, and sometimes just shit comes up, and you don't even realize it. There's just I could have swore that this Kansas trip was a good 3-4 weeks away, and next thing I know, I'm like, oh fuck, we're heading out on Tuesday, and so it was a little more rushed than I'd hoped, but either way, it was fun. We had a kind of a late cancellation on our comedy show, but Eric Shields was able to come back up and or come on up and tell some jokes. He played his guitar a little bit, and then Robbie made the show. It was a fun time. It was kind of a shit show. The audio setup was not great. I really liked that brewery that we were at. It's Hidden Trail Brewery there in Garden City, Kansas. Guy that owns is really, really good dude. I like it. I hope to come back soon and do something else there, and we'll work get a little better sound setup so everybody can hear us. But either way, I heard some good reports from people here and disaster. So that worked out pretty good. And anyhow, good to be with the family. It was good to see some old friends. Saw a few old friends, and didn't get to see everybody. Of course, that's how it always goes. But it was fun. It was hot. It was really, really hot. It was really windy, and it was Southwest Kansas. It's exactly what you'd expect from Southwest Kansas. Anyhow, we had a little bit of a tragedy, and I say that with the greatest amount of respect. But there was a lot of cattle that died over the past week or so, and I'm gonna try to pull up the numbers on this deal. Where did I? Okay. First, All right. Well, I'll go ahead and pop this up. But reading from the fence posts, because they're pretty. I would say they're kind of a no nonsense type operation, and similar to livestock losses due to blizzards and floods, extreme heat coupled with high humidity and lack of wind can cause heat stress and death in livestock. Thousands of cattle in Kansas were lost recently to this phenomenon. We had a natural disaster in southwest Kansas on June 11th, 2020 or 2022, and in the days that followed, that greatly affected cattle being fed for slaughter. It wasn't a tornado or flood or a government conspiracy to dismantle our food supply. There's no mystery, disease, or theory. We know exactly what happened, said Tara Barnhart, DVM, DVMMS. It's called a heat index crisis. Prior to this day, our average temperatures were in the 70s and night temperatures in the 40s. The wind was normal, and we were receiving rain showers that we so desperately needed. Barnhart is a feedlot vet in from Southwest Kansas. She said the cattle were not acclimated to the heat as it went from 80 degrees to over 100 in the space of a day, with no real cooling at night. On June 11th, temperatures rose, humidity was high, and wind speed nearly ceased. This is an emergency for cattle. Cattle cannot compensate for this type of weather event if they do not get a period of night cooling. For several days, this continued. Our people did everything in their power to save as many animals as they could. Our people are amazing and tired and weary. We lost a lot of cattle, and we are physically affected by each loss because we know firsthand the resources and expertise that go into raising safe, wholesome, and delicious beef for our consumers. There are three components of the weather conditions that to create a situation that cattle cannot handle. When you have all three, cattle build up heat in their bodies, cannot get rid of it. These high temperatures, high humidity, and no wind. These are high temperatures, high humidity, and no wind. If you have only two of these things, then cattle can usually survive as they are able to cool themselves, said Matt Thompson, former feedlot manager, owner in the United States and Australia. Events cause severe death occur over a number of days. Cattle can tolerate three extreme conditions if the danger of dying the next conditions persist. This weather event was geographically centered in Haskell County and Grant County, Kansas. This is the losses section. So, as I said, it was really fucking hot in Southwest Kansas this past week, with a climate that is superior for raising cattle for slaughter. Over 600,000 head of cattle are on feed in just those two counties alone, with 2.5 million cattle on feed in Southwest Kansas. Barnhart said she believes the actual death losses with the 5,000 head, but hopefully less than 10,000, as they are still dealing with the extreme heat and stressed cattle. Numbers devastating to the owners and the percentage of cattle in the region. Okay, so now we come to the part where, and this is one of the reasons why I don't get real upset and I don't argue too much when my bosses tell me to pull a video down off of social media. A viral video of dead cats circulating on social media, so the unfortunate losses have garnered a great deal of media attention. We are seeing 4 to 5 days before deaths 4 to 5 days before it went. Most of the deaths were in immune compromised and those ready to shoot. They are the heaviest and have the most fat. They didn't all drop dead in one day and still dealing with cattle suffering from heat stress. Media has been reporting 10,000 head or more dead, but Barnhart said the numbers have come from the state as feed yards can apply for emergency burial permits are issued, but not all are needed or used. So, to clarify that point, so media's been reporting 10,000 or more dead, but that number, according to this vet, says come from the state, because if you have a big traumatic event like that, and a bunch of cattle die all at once, whether it be a blizzard or a big freeze or heat deal like this, you can apply for a permit to just bury them all, and they'll usually let you. And then there's you apply for, say, 1,000 head or whatever your death loss is, and so you're like, we've got like 200 on the ground right now, and we're expecting 600, and you only get 400. Well, that doesn't. Those counts don't get adjusted till way later. So anyway, that's how that number right here, the 10,000 head, that's coming from based off of how many emergency burial permits were for and the number of head that were used on that. So I don't know if that's true or not. According to this vet, who would know better than I do? That's what she says. So I have no. Still funny, even it wasn't meant to be funny. That's what she said. Always gets me. Anyway, I have no way of knowing if what she said is true without doing a bunch of research, extra research. I've done some, but the numbers have been a little hard to find, and to get those, I think they're readily available if you know where to search. That's the problem. That's always the problem with bureaucracy. Is it a Department of Agriculture or is it a Department of Environment? Like what is? I don't know. So I haven't got the exact numbers. But fence posts, as I was saying when I started, kind of just started that article after I failed to finish that thought. But fence posts is kind of a no nonsense. I think they're obviously going to be skewed more towards the cattle producer than anything else, but I think they do pretty good work, and and I think it's a pretty good article. So the permits are issued, but not all are needed or used. She said the feedlots are very full right now due to markets and more cattle going on feed. So with the added numbers, most yards do not have a lot of open pens to spread cattle out, and many don't want to add the social stress by disrupting animal groups. Our number one thing we employ during extreme heat is a no cattle movement policy unless absolutely necessary. If they have to be moved across the yard for shipping, those moves are made at night. Extra water tanks are also placed in the back of pens so more animals can take advantage of the evaporation cooling from water. She said even spreading extra bedding such as corn stalks in the pens can give the animals something to nest in and has been proven to help lower their body temperature. This is especially helpful when the pen floor is dark and humid from urine and manure. Sprinkling with water, the last thing employed, as it can add humidity and without wind won't evaporate and cool the animals. Black-hided cattle, except Wagyu, are more susceptible to heat stress than light-hided cattle because black absorbs heat, Thompson said. These events have happened since the beginning of time. One big reason large-scale cattle feeding moved to the high plains area is that it is rare to have all three things at once. The most important thing is you don't want to block airflow, meaning do-gooders have attempted to force feedlots to build shade. This can be difficult and somewhat dangerous in high wind areas that feedlots are usually built, and they can make it worse if they block wind. We are raising high-quality beef, which comes at a higher risk, Barnhart said. All right, so I don't know what the numbers are. I don't think anybody really knows what the numbers are. But according to my brother-in-law, who runs a large-scale custom silage crew in that area, particularly in Grant County. I'm not as familiar with Haskell County. That's liberal Kansas, but I'm somewhat familiar with that over there. I'm fairly familiar with Grant County, and then on over. But those were the two big ones, as they were saying, Haskell and Grant County. So that's Grant County Feeders is a five rivers yard, huge, 100 120,000 head ish in the summertime. Summertime's when you're going to push your cattle a little bit closer together, try to squeeze a little bit more out of your pen space, and because you got a lot of cattle coming off of grass, and and you don't need quite as much bunk space in the summer because the pens aren't going to be as shitty, and it's a little easier to work with in the summer. However, it can get really hot, and when it's 105 like it was, um, air temperature, um, that's going to be about 105 when you're out in the pasture like that. Your grass might be a little bit hotter, but it's going to be roughly what your air temperature is. And the feedlot, that changes drastically. You have a dirt floor, manure floor pen, and it collects a ton of heat. So when you're talking 105-degree air temperature, you're probably looking at closer to 130 or 140 degrees of the floor, the pen floor temperature, the ground temperature. Um, it's hot. It's really hot, and because it's hot and it's dry, and usually the wind is blowing like a son of a bitch, and it's a pain in the ass, but it helps. It just keeps the air moving, and it helps cool things off, even though if it feels like a hot wind, it usually is, but it does cool things down, because as soon as that wind stops, you're just like, holy shit, it is just hot, stifling hot. There's nothing to circulate the air, and it's just hot all around you, and you can't escape it. And then you add a little bit of moisture to that. I'm living in the high desert right now, and it's real dry. And I grew up essentially in the high desert. It's the Great Plains, High Plains, whatever you want to call that. Um, but it's basically a desert. I mean, it's just hovering right around that level. I think it's 12 inches a year is what they consider. If you have less than 12 inches of precipitation a year, that's considered a desert area. And yeah, everywhere I grew up hovered right around that. It was always 11 to 13 inches, so it was just right on the edge of desert country. And but with that comes a lot of heat, and then you're not used to humidity at all. Like 25% humidity is like muggy. That is really muggy in that part of the world. Well, you had at least 3-4 days in a row where there's in the 70s and the 80s. You had some good rain. They needed it really bad, and the grass is really looking pretty good where there is grass. A lot of people plowing up CRP and shit, which is a bad sign. That we'll get onto that to another time. But um, anyhow, 3 or 4 days of cool, wet weather, and then over the course of a day and a half, 2 days, from 80 degrees being the high and 45 or so at night to over 100 and just dipping down to maybe like 72, 73 at night, maybe. And Thursday, yeah, so Thursday to Tuesday, and there was several degrees before it got there. I mean, it was a bad deal. But the kicker was when the wind quit blowing, and then you got all that humidity in the air. You got the over 100-degree temperature, and there's no wind to move it around. And then you get the real fine shit dust that just kind of hangs in the air. And then you got a whole bunch of big fat cattle ready to eat, ready to go to slaughter. And the vast majority of them are black-hided because that is what the market wants right now. It's what's been the trend for the past 30 years or so. And yeah, you have a whole herd, or a whole breed of cattle that are known for being red with white face and legs and belly, and now they have a black version of that same breed. And there's some good genetic commingling, but at the end of the day, that's just to catch a market premium on black-hided cattle. So you got a lot of black-hided cattle. They absorb a lot of heat, and if they're on the verge of slaughter weight, so you're talking anything over like 1,100 pounds is on the verge of getting ready to go. And yeah, so they got an extra layer of fat, they got black hide, they got just sweltering heat, high humidity, and not a breath of wind, and a bunch of shit dust hanging around in the air. And once again, I don't know the numbers, but I would be willing to bet that 90% or better of those cattle that have died have been treated at least one time. Some of them, I've seen cattle that you treat, they come out of it really good, look really like they're really gonna pull through, dying, and then you take a look at their lungs, and you're like, how in the fuck were they living that long? They'll be 25% tissue that's still usable in both their lungs, and they look big, healthy, and fat on the outside. It just when you're working with that little lung capacity, and then you got to overload it for days on end like that, eventually it just gives out. You give up, and the old heart quits ticking. And it's I could say, you could say it's kind of a somewhat of a moral quandary. We want our cattle to be pretty fat to get the good quality beef that we like. But when you get a big heat stroke or a heat wave like that, it's going to lead to a lot of heat stroke and heat stress on those cattle, particularly ones that you're trying to fatten up to slaughter. Apparently that has become a moral quandary nowadays, just the fact that that's what you try to do with cattle, even though that's what we've been doing with cattle ever since we domesticated them, or any animal for that matter that we have domesticated for meat production. The idea has been to fatten them before slaughter so that they taste the best possible way. But also for the longest fucking time, we understood that if you were born with a dick, you were considered a man, and if you were born with a vagina, you're a woman. And now that apparently that line has become quite blurred. So why wouldn't the reason that we fatten cattle to slaughter, why wouldn't that line become a little more blurred nowadays, huh? So you get a little bit of that going, and then you add in the social media pressure, and that shit went viral. I can't tell you the exact amount of people that contacted me over the weekend, because I don't know right off the top of my head, but a lot, enough where my wife was like, "Are they asking about the dead cows again?" I said, yeah, everybody's. And I understand being really suspicious of stuff. I advocate being very suspicious of what you hear in the news. Um, and that being said, you should be very suspicious of what the news is reporting. Thousands and then you'll read it in the headline: thousands of cattle dead, and then you read down and they say at least 2,000 head. I'm like, well, that is the literal definition of thousands. Is you have to have more than 1,000. And, you'd have to have at least 2,000s to make thousands of cattle. So they say at least 2,000 head have died. Okay, so that's the literal definition of thousands. So were they wrong? No, but when you hear thousands, I don't think 2,000. I think 5, 10, 30, 60,000. Thousands of head. I guess all the way up to 10,000. Then you say 10,000 head, and then after up to 20,000, then you'd say thousands of head. Up to 100,000, and then once it gets to 200,000, you'd say hundreds of thousands. No, I mean, I'm not much of a grammar, English teacher, math teacher, whatever. But anyhow, very, very deceptive, but sneaky. And that's how they do that shit. But then we also have to keep people that are supposedly on our side. We got to keep them honest as well. And all right, so here, I guess we'll pop this stuff up here. This is the video that was circulating that went viral. And this, I'm pretty sure. Damn it. All right, hold on. All right, here we go. This feed yard in Ulysses. It's got almost 2 million views just on Twitter. I saw this I saw it on Facebook. I saw it on Instagram. I didn't get on TikTok, but I'm sure too. And I'm pretty sure that a guy I used to work with here in Nevada was right there in that skid loader. But yeah, that was a bad deal. This is a pretty big yard, and I don't know if it was at that feed yard or not, but I'm pretty sure that it looked like it, and they lost a lot of cattle just from reports that I'd heard. And but there's a lot of cattle there, but there's nowhere near nowhere close to 10,000 head. The most common question that I got this weekend was, is this real? And I know they're getting pretty good at the deep fake stuff to make you think shit's not, shit's real when it's not. But, and I don't know the logistics behind it, but just looking at that whole deal, I mean, it seems kind of seems like that one would be okay. Those are all well over 1,000 pounds, all black hided, and yeah, it's fucking sucks. So anyway, the where everything went kind of awry. Chad Prather, I'm sure you all know who he is. He's kind of got famous being one of those cowboy in the truck ranting into his camera, talking about how bad the Democrats fucked everything up. He's not wrong for the most part. But anyway, here he goes. 10,000 cattle cattle don't just drop dead from heat. Every time I think that the Republicans, conservatives, um, are gonna just roll through to like an easy win on an election, they somehow find a way to fuck it up. And this thing here, um, that's the kind of thing you really don't want a lot of press on. Like, I mean, it's a shitty deal, and it's one of those things like you tell your city friends about, but man, it just there's not a way to put a good light on it. And when you're dealing with Mother Nature, said that just the other day, and I just like, boy, she reminds you over and over again. You just, no matter how much technology and shit you have, I mean, it just, the hubris to think that we can control what the weather does is beyond me. Like, yeah, I don't understand it, but also, all right. So I'm going to go in on this Chad Prather guy a little bit, because he's a big voice in the conservative movement, and he his ultimate goals are. I know he had a governor. He was running for governor in Texas there, and but that's really, I don't know what he did before he became, kind of the social media force that he has become. But I've seen him. He started getting popular back, like maybe around 2012 or so. Like the like the second it was like him and Graham Allen and a couple others. They do that. They're like driving around, and Graham Allen was just the Southern boy, and Chad Prather was the Texan, just ranting about these goddamn. I didn't say that because he's a proper fella. These darn. I think he's also kind of a comedian, I guess. So I don't know, but either way, it was that in that same vein, just ranting about the Democrats and this and that, and so you're not wrong for the most part. Now he's got himself a show on Blaze TVs. That's Glenn Beck's network, and seems to be doing very well for himself. Like I said, launched a governor campaign. Yeah, let's see, how many followers does this fella have? He's verified on Twitter, and he's got 290,000 followers. Um, got a box where you 290,000 people, just shy of. I bet you he gets some tips, and I mean, shit, 9,000 retweets on that. Well, it was a retweet, but and he okay, so he went back and clarified it later, but I want to just read this whole deal. So 10,000 head of cattle don't just drop dead from meat. It's Kansas. It's not hell. Maybe Bill Gates has an answer since he's the biggest farmer in America and wants you eating his synthetic meat. Okay. So if we're to take your tweet at face value, you're saying this is not normal. I agree. This doesn't happen very often. It's not. Well, for those 3, 4, 5 days, it kind of was, and it took a toll. Um, yeah, like I said, I would bet money that 90% or better of those cattle were. Eh, it's kind of morbid just having that playing in the background, but I do think it's an important thing. Like, this shit can happen. This shit can really happen when you put uh bunch of in a confined feeding deal. You increase the risk of disease. You increase the risk of death. I mean, that goes with any type of living animal in particular. A lot of plants too, but in anything in the animal kingdom, if you put a bunch of them closer together and close ups the risk of disease and all sorts of nasty. It's why I like cities like New York and Newark and Detroit, and that's why the COVID rates higher in there. There's more people. They're living way closer together. That's same thing with a feedlot. Think of a feedlot as just a cow city. I mean, it just and that's basically what it was. And think of Southwest Kansas as kind of like the eastern seaboard of the cattle world. It's obviously not a seaboard; it's in the middle of the fucking country. But in a state like Kansas, which according to what I read is number 3 cattle producer in the country, it's Texas, Nebraska, then Kansas. With Southwest Kansas having 2.1 million head of cattle on feed. Just cattle on feed. That doesn't take into account the stockers, and the cow calf producers, let alone the dairy. There's a lot of dairy cattle too. But you look at that overall number. You take just the feedlot cattle, 2.1 million head in Southwest Kansas, 600,000 head in Haskell and Grant County alone. And then you take, we'll say the 10,000 head. I've heard numbers estimated going to be quite a bit more, and I've heard, we've read the official numbers according to these vets and stuff at just over 2,000 head. So we got a lot of leeway, but we'll take the median number. We'll say 10,000 head. Spread that over 600,000. Still a higher percentage. You don't want that. So 600,000 head, 6,000. That's 1%. You try to keep your death loss percent as much as you can. But now when you got almost 2% death loss in the span of a week, like that's a bad deal. So that's gonna hurt. Yeah. Yeah. So is that normal? No, it is not. Okay, now we'll get to the Bill Gates, and you all know me very well at this point. If you've been listening for very long, you know there is not a single conspiracy that I will not at least entertain and kind of kick it around in my head. Not a single one. Particularly when I don't know the answer. Like I will question. This one, however, um, we'll get into it. So, Bill Gates. It is a fact that he is now the largest owner of farmland in the United States. On record, on video multiple times, how he's talking about how in the future we'll be eating lab-created meat better for the environment and all that. It also is true that over the past, I don't know, year or so, maybe it's 2 years, can't remember the timeline on that, we've had a number of, I would say dozens, but I don't know if we had 24, I think it was like 22 food processing plants that burnt down. Either were damaged or burnt all the way down. So if there's 24 of them, I would say dozens of, maybe, no, I think it'd have to be 25. It'd have to be 25 or more, because if it's 24, you'd say 2 dozen. No, that's how words work sometimes. Anyway, in the ballpark of 20 food processing plants have caught on fire in the past couple of years, so that's a fact as well. And now, what's also a fact is people are ready to believe some wild shit, like all on board. And we've had the QAnon phenomenon rage through conservative circles. We have, what you had reasonable, rational people with good brains, I would say, seem to truly believe that there was a secret military tribunal held at Guantanamo Bay, in which Hillary Clinton and Bill Barr and several other high-ranking officials were sentenced to death for committing treason. People were not just willing to entertain that idea, but actually believed that. It, of course, wasn't true unless all these interviews that Hillary's been doing and tweeting and all that shit. Unless that's not real, then maybe it happened. I don't know, but you had from my point of view, like a surprisingly large amount of formerly rational thinking people buy into some crazy shit. And I understand that. I do understand that, because when you look at some of the shit that the government actually has done already, like it's been documented that they did, a lot of shit doesn't sound all that crazy anymore. It's kind of wild. And then whole pandemic after the Roni, there's not much of anything that people are just willing to take at face value anymore. And I understand that, and I think that's a good thing. However, there's that old saying, being red pilled. So origins trace back to the movie The Matrix. You take the red pill and you see what's actually happening, or you take the blue pill and you just stay there in the Matrix. And I'm a big fan of this. I don't know. He's an author. He does a podcast, and he's just kind of I don't know. He's I guess a philosopher. But anyway, Michael Malice. He's he calls himself what he would call an anarchist. Doesn't believe there's basically believe things should be based off of voluntary interaction. But he has a really witty saying. Well, he always has some witty sayings, but this one I'm a big fan of. But it says you should. He says you should take one red pill and not the whole bottle. So be aware that the government and the media and corporations and democracies and all that, all the people, just be aware that they are lying to you, And that's what being red pilled means. Like you're seeing it for what they are. They're purposely feeding you a false narrative. However, not everything is a conspiracy. Not everything was an underhanded motive. If we believe, like most conservatives do, that weather's weather, it's going to change, and there's not much we can do to stop it. There's not much we can do to change it. There's a lot we can do to make it worse. Said this many a times, probably more times than I care to admit here in the past couple weeks or so. But the Dust Bowl is the perfect example of how we can take a typical drought. Maybe it wasn't a typical drought. It was a nasty, really nasty drought. Worse since then, believe it or not. But we were able to make what was going to be an already shitty period of time of really shitty weather and make it worse by taking 30 million acres of native prairie grass and plowing it up and turning it into farmland right before a time you wouldn't be able to grow a crop there. The dirt, the topsoil blew, compounded by the Great Depression. It was a whole thing. But it's a perfect example of how we can sure exacerbate a situation, even a natural situation. We can take what was already going to happen and go ahead and just make it a little bit worse. So, on that note, we took something here that happened and we made it worse by attributing it to I guess looking bad guy for the conservative or anti kind of globalist type. You can count myself and a lot of other libertarian type people in that same camp that really don't trust big pharma. They don't trust Bill Gates. They don't trust big agriculture. Trust big corporations. And you see how these things are all kind of working, intertwined with each other, and it boils down into like there's a lot of people who would normally shrug off something like this and be like, that really sucks. And instead of sharing a pray for Kansas on your Facebook profile picture, they have the little frame. Instead of that, you share this deal from Chad Prather and said, ask Bill Gates if he's got an answer about this shit. Well, the answer to this shit, Chad Prather, is it was cool and it rained, bringing the humidity up, and then it got hot, like really fucking hot, and stayed hot. It didn't cool down at night, and then the wind quit blowing, and yeah, it sucks. It's the same way 5 years ago we had a spring blizzard. I know there was one alley in the yard that I used to work. One alley alone, they lost 200 head. Nobody was saying Bill Gates is trying to kill my cattle with the snow. I didn't hear any of that shit. I didn't hear that shit when South Dakota and I think North Dakota, I don't know about North Dakota, but I know South Dakota here a couple of years ago got hammered. Nebraska too got hammered with heavy blizzards. A lot of cattle died. I don't remember anybody blaming Bill Gates about that shit. Because we know that Bill Gates can't control the fucking weather. And so maybe put it on the other foot. We all know, we should know, especially Chad Brett cattle business, as he says he is, or been around it enough, you would know that there in the Great Plains, it's cattle country. There's a lot of cattle there, and they're there for a good reason because the climate's right for it. But some sometimes the climate gets really extreme because it's an extreme part of the world. And when you have a confluence of events like that, just like with Hurricane Sandy, they called that like the perfect storm. Right? It was a superstorm or whatever. And it was a confluence of events that made it really crazy. Same way with a big tornado or a really big hurricane. Any of that shit. When you get a number of outlying factors that all kind of come together magically, it can fuck some shit up. It really can. And Chad Prather, with his 290,000 followers, tweets and I can see the connection there with with the synthetic meat deal, because if there's no real cattle to kill, then they'll be forced to eat synthetic meat. However, if we go back over the numbers, um, if we're talking all 10,000 head, and if it was 10,000 head, if they all came from the two main counties affected, Haskell and Grant, which they're not. I know they're not, because it said in the article they're not, and also know people from other counties that also lost cattle through this. But just for to simplify it down, we're talking 600,000 head in those two counties alone, and we'll speculate and say 10,000 head, or we'll even say 20,000, or not 20, 12,000 head. So that'd be 2% death loss. 2%. 12,000 head. That would shut down one kill plant. We'll take the Tyson kill plant at Holcomb, Kansas. That would shut down that plant for about 2 days. 2 days worth of cattle that they would have to go find. In the grand scheme of things, it's a drop in the bucket. For the particular event that happened, that's probably a once in a decade type loss. Maybe once in 5 years. I don't know. We'll say 5 years. It's been about 5 years since they had that big of a death loss in Southwest Kansas, and that was during the blizzard of April and May of 2017. I'd venture to say that'd be the last time they lost the cattle in that big in numbers. So also they were underwater here a couple of years ago, and this is just media. It's hype, and this fucking guy Chad Prather, every man, sticking up for the rural folks, getting upset at Bill Gates over the weather, because Bill Gates can control the weather and he wants to put a vaccine in you. One of those things is true. And I ain't met anybody yet that can control the weather, and I ain't read about anybody yet that can control the weather. So, that being said, unless you truly believe that man can change the weather to the point where they can direct a heat event like this, then no, this was not a man-made event. this and the funny thing about it is all of it, the way it all came together. Is it at the hottest it's ever been in Southwest Kansas? No, not by a long shot. I think it's the record temperature for this time of year is going to be up over 110. So they didn't get that high. Was the humidity overwhelming? Probably not. I don't know. I'm guessing it was like 50-60% humidity by the time it got really, really hot. And it did blow, but when it didn't, it made it even worse. And it's just hot. And you add the feedlot environment into that. Yeah, it makes for a shitty deal. I can speak from a wealth of experience. I'm now, it's 2022, going on 14 years. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, just past my 14-year mark in the feedlot. It's hot. It gets hot, and then when you're in the pens, it's even hotter. That's what it is. No, and then this I can keep harping on this Chad Prather guy because he also came after somebody pretty hard in the comments. Got really kind of rude about it because they corrected him on his bullshit, and then he tried to walk it back. And I think I got the thread pulled up here. Let me find that one again. I'll pop it up, but he did walk it back a little bit, but he also came after some people that called him on his bullshit. So he said, "I've never been anything but an advocate and of the cattle industry on a level. My tweet earlier this week was taken completely out of intended purpose. It was an attempt to defend the industry and point out how there's a lot of enemies to the industry." Okay, so let's go back to the original. It's Kansas. It's not hell. 10,000 head of cattle don't just drop dead from heat. It's Kansas. It's not hell. Maybe Bill Gates has an answer since he's the biggest farmer in America and wants you eating his synthetic meat. Okay, so that not so subtly implies that Bill Gates has an answer to why 10,000 head of cattle didn't just drop dead from the heat, because 10,000 head of cattle just don't do that. All right, back to the thread. The Green New Deal puts a direct target on beef. The push for synthetic meat doesn't help. The media wants to drive a narrative. I will always use my platform to expose their agenda. Okay. So, in what way did you expose their agenda? Because you insinuated that Bill Gates was behind this and it was all a push for synthetic meat, that there was something sinister. Okay. No one supports ranchers and cattle growers more than me. I bet you there are. I have been active in that world for a long time. What happened in Kansas was, in terms of its scale, there were numerous factors besides just the temperature getting high: fatted black hides, humidity, temps at night, no wind, no time for acclimation, the perfect storm. Forgive my attempt at satire and referencing cattle enemies such as Bill Gates. I have the utmost respect for people and never meant to pile on emotion that goes with such a lot. My original, and in response to the media narrative I saw being pushed, tons of misinformation has been pushed since. Make no mistake, the cattle industry has a lot of enemies. My failed attempt to fight for it is regretful for many reasons. All right, so he's basically saying he was taken out of context, but everything he's trying to say here as opposed to what actually meant. He said it was meant as satire. Satire is usually supposed to be funny, and maybe this was funny to somebody. I'm not seeing it. I'm not saying it was. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm biased on this because I just don't particularly care to see a bunch of dead cattle floating across my timeline. That usually means people in my line of work are gonna get a shit on for a little while, and I'm just not a big fan of that. But I I don't understand. So then this gal, what is her name? She calls herself the OG Devil's Advocate. Michelle, she's from Oregon or somewhere. Just realized I had the wrong share screen up for you. We'll fix that. All right. So she says I appreciate the ranchers and veterinarians in the comments trying to shed on what happened, but get told by someone who probably can't keep a cactus alive that they don't know what they're talking about. And so that's in response to the Chad Prather original tweet. And he said, well, point of fact, it doesn't just happen. There are extenuating factors beyond just heat. Read the context of the tweet. And yes, there is a war on beef in America, and no, Bill Gates does not have any answers. The fact that you read the negativity into this is your problem. No, dipshit, she read what you put, and it did not seem to have any sort of humor behind it. I just, if you're going to be wrong, just be wrong. Like, admit when you're wrong and move the fuck on. If you got to apologize, which I don't care if this guy apologizes. Like, I didn't see him out there trying to water cattle down or try to bet them or trying to do something to alleviate the heat stress. Let me tell you, that's a helpless fucking feeling. You know that if you spray them down with water, they're gonna be cooled off for a little bit, but then it's gonna raise humidity in the pen, and that's gonna make the heat index higher. So then you gotta cool them down again, increasing the humidity in the pen again. And so you might be better off just not spraying water on them at all. And then, like, they still just die on you. They just fucking die. Their lungs and their heart give out, and there ain't a goddamn thing you can do about it. It's constantly been the struggle of agriculture. You fight Mother Nature up to a point, but if Mother Nature don't want you to win, you ain't gonna win. And this was one of those situations. And I gotta say, a lot of you that are in the cattle business, in particular, or been around it, are acting like a bunch of fucking morons. Like, I enjoy a good conspiracy theory. I really do. But my God, man, like, do a little bit of research outside of a fucking TikTok video. Yeah, were those real cattle? They were. But to somehow equate this, like, I would not have taken that I might have taken that video, but I would not have posted that publicly. That's not something you want the general public to see. And I'm not for censorship, but I'm for freedom of expression, and I would not feel free to express that video out in public. That's be like just showing a video of your dead grandma at the funeral. I just like I don't that one's I think it was very poor taste that whoever did that. I think you guys and I'm not the best example of this, but like y'all need to pay a lot of close attention to what you share on social media and how it might be weaponized against you. I think there's a lot of times people get a little too bent out of shape about it, but also a lot of times they're right. And this one, it took somebody from who's supposedly on our side, ran with it to stir up a little controversy, and then attacked people when they called out his bullshit. And so fuck that guy. And I don't want to say any tell anybody else to fuck off, but like I do just the basic amount of research. Maybe look at weather.com and see what the historical data says on the weather situation. That'll tell you most of it right there. Like you can just go look up Ulysses, Kansas, weather.com, and go back to like the 30-day previous. Look at what the weather was and how it acted and how that, and then just know that on top of that, you're adding we'll say Ulysses feeders about 75,000 head, and Grant County feeders, they're just I don't think they're about 10 miles away from each other, maybe 120,000 head. So between those two, you got roughly 200,000 head one time capacity. 200,000 head just between 2 yards like that, and you add the extra heat from the pen floor, and it's a shitty deal. And anybody who has been around cattle and been or can just use their brain a little bit could should be able to tell. I understand that you can't really trust what the news is saying, and I do appreciate people that reached out and asked my thoughts on it. I do appreciate that, because that's one step of doing your research. You guys know that I work in a feedlot and have for a long time. I can tell you a little bit about these things. I don't know from firsthand experience on this particular deal, because I don't work in Kansas anymore. I was there right after it happened, and it was fucking miserable weather-wise, I can tell you that. So yeah, there's to the, I don't know, 10, 15, 20. I'm not sure exactly how many people messaged me on this deal, but thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. That's doing a little bit of research. So that's all it takes. And I told you, I said, no, that shit's real. That shit is real. There's no conspiracy theory behind it. That was just a shitty weather event. And yeah. So anyway, people that bought into that bullshit, do better research, and focus your fight on shit where you can actually have an impact, maybe. But because if Bill Gates can control the weather and just have it hover, just shit hot weather, in such a way that's going to kill a large amount of cattle like that, then we're fucked. Like we can't beat Bill Gates if that's what he can. My pony off a cliff tomorrow, but he can't, and we all know that. So use your fucking head a little bit, okay? Don't fall for all the bullshit. Entertain the idea, but then think: how would this actually happen? How would they go about poisoning all of these cattle. We're not, and it's not like widespread death from yard to yard. It's a significant increase in what their daily death rate is for sure, but you're not talking the whole yard dying, and it's not contained to like a single yard. No, it's widespread throughout these two. It's kind of localized in 2 counties, but there's a lot of room in between those feedlots, and there's a lot of those feedlots. You know, there's a third of the capacity that's made up by 2 yards, but there's still a fuckload of other feedlots in those 2 counties. And yeah, people need to be smarter, please. Try, at least. Research, read, ask. That helps. And yeah, I would take anything Chad Prather says with a large grain of salt. And especially like how he kind of walked back his statement, but also was like, I was doing this to help. He didn't fucking help, dude. Did not help. Yeah, you stirred up a bunch of shit based on nothing. Also, like, I know the whole Bill Gates conspiracy theory, and I'm not saying there ain't nothing to it. I'm just saying you stirred up a bunch of shit unnecessarily because you're a douchebag. So anyway, fuck Chad Prather, and that's it for me today. Make sure you go check out the Patreon and everything. That's the best way to support the show. I'll try not to be a douchebag and get you alarmed over nonsense. But can't promise anything. I'll try. But anyway, patreon.com/burning daylight. Please go check it out. Subscribe if you'd like to help out the show. Anyways, have a good week. Stay hydrated. It's hot out there. And move your ass. We're burning daylight.
Your eyes up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. We'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right. Burning daylight. Well, life is just a gather, and you won't catch 'em all. But when you ride through the gate, make sure you sit up tall. I can see the horizon, it's looking pretty bright. Well, get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right.